One of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I won my Emmy Award for my interview skills. I always believed if you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. So when I started learning all about limb salvage and the options that were available and the hope that could be instilled in patients because of this, I went to these social media groups with the idea that I would use this information to create questions for these patients to ask their doctor. And it was through that process of providing them with a higher gain question, a more informed question that they could use with their doctor, it was actually improving the outcomes.
All right, guys, I am here with Kim. Kim is the founder of the PAD Association, the Global PAD Association. Tell me, what do you guys do?
So we provide education, high-touch advocacy, and real-time support to more than 12,000 patients across the globe. When it comes to education, yes, there's education provided across multiple websites on the internet, but we provide comprehensive, personalized education. We have our Leg Saver hotline. People can call 1-833-PAD-LEGS, and they can tell us about their situation. We even have education that's specific to doctors, so certain doctors will have us provide a script for certain ailments and their philosophies and things like that we can provide to the patient. We provide high-touch advocacy where we prepare the patients for their appointments, provide them with the critical questions they can ask their doctor. We support them during their appointments, so we show up, help facilitate a more productive and satisfying conversation between the patient and the doctor, make sure that the patient is asking the questions that they want to ask or that they meant to ask, and that they're actually hearing what the doctor is saying. Because as you know, when you're in a situation with a doctor, you don't always hear everything. You kind of hear the one thing. If they talk about amputation, that's the one thing you're going to hone in on is amputation. But that might have just been, hey, if all else fails, not saying it will, amputation is going to be the last resort. They don't hear last resort. They hear amputation. They go online. They go to Dr. Google. And Dr. Google says they're going to be dead in 5 years. So we make sure that we're taking notes during the conversation with the doctors, sometimes depending on whether or not we have a PAD navigator in the area with them, or we'll do it virtually. Most patients do prefer that we, do it virtually. Sometimes they'll say that it's a friend of theirs or their cousin or their sister. It's whatever they're most comfortable with. And we'll just take notes, and then we follow up with the patient, sometimes their family, sometimes their friends, and we'll help to make sure that they have a comprehensive understanding of the diagnosis, the treatment options, the long-term management options, and if they need a second opinion, which we always suggest with every patient before any procedure, just to understand all the different options that might be available to them and that they're most comfortable before they go into a procedure, we'll offer that as well. And then this is the real crux of what we do. It's the big pain in the butt for all of the doctors. It's compliance with critical lifestyle modifications. We provide lifestyle modification support for diet, exercise, and smoking cessation. For walking, we have the only structured walking program that's available. It democratizes access for patients. We don't require a copay. It's flexible. Only 5% of Medicare patients that are enrolled in a supervised exercise therapy program, the holy grail of exercise therapy programs for PAD, actually finish the 36 sessions. And the number one reason why they don't finish those sessions is they say it's the flexibility, and then number two is the cost. They can't afford the copay for every single one of these sessions. And so what we did was we developed an app that allows the patient to measure their claudication time, which is most important. The claudication time is the time when they first start feeling the pain and how long they're walking through that pain to the point where that pain gets so bad they're going to limp and they're forced to rest. And so we measure that. We measure the improvement in that claudication time and their walk to rest, their time they started walking to the time they have to rest over a certain amount of time, and it's flexible. And we have a more than 90% retention rate for the duration of the 12 weeks that patients are involved. And I think that one of the real successes to it is that we pair it with a patient community and weekly sessions where we have a doctor or a doctor of physical therapy who is available to answer patient questions, and then we allow them a community platform where they can share their milestones and get support and tips and tricks from other patients that are going through the same thing along with them. And then we have our smoking cessation program, proprietary project that we worked on. It was developed by patients for patients. It's run by 2 peer sponsors who were both former addicts. One has her mom that is a PAD patient, and he is a PAD. The other one is a PAD patient as well. And it's 12 weeks, and it's really PAD specific. And so we're finding great success in the informal aspects of the program that we've conducted so far in getting people to quit smoking. And then the diet is very informal. We have a book. It's a more than 100-page book.
Wow.
That allows patients to work with their own healthcare team, but just provides a structure for the patient to work with them on personalizing a dietary plan for them. But we also have world-renowned diabetes reversal expert, Dr. Michael Danziger. You've heard of The Biggest Loser on NBC, or he was one of the medical advisors for that show. And he wrote this big, famous Tufts diabetes reversal program. And so every Monday he comes on for 30 minutes and answers whatever questions patients have. So it's a pretty robust program. And as I said, we have more than 12,000 patients with it. And we're looking to partner with especially OBLs and ASCs to provide all of this for them, along with a 24/7 extension to their clinic where we can provide additional education for their patients.
So you have so much passion watching you speak. What got you into this?
Oh, that's a good long story. It's actually pretty good though. So I'm an Emmy award-winning journalist by trade. And I ended up finding a story that I just didn't like the ending. And it was through working with Sir Richard Branson's startup competition. I was the executive director. I helped grow it into more than 5,000 startups that had applied and participated in their program over the course of 3 years. And one of the biggest trends through that time that I worked with them was healthcare. It was moving at the speed of light in terms of innovation. And at the same time, I launched a radio show, and a lot of the startups that I interviewed were healthcare startups. And one in particular was a laser startup, and they were supposed to be the biggest breakthrough in saving lives. But the first leg of the journey, of course, in bringing an atherectomy device to market, or a rotor-rooting device to market, was the legs. And so I asked the CEO if I could travel with them through their FDA clearance process, through global commercialization for the legs, to get to the heart. And I ended up falling in love with the legs. I was so passionate about it because these doctors were so passionate about it. I started bringing the information I was learning to patients on social media platforms, and I realized that, wait a minute, I'm doing a really great service here. And that's when The Way to My Heart was born. That is our 501c3. And through that, it's evolved into the Global PAD Association, because the American Diabetes Association came to us and said, hey, do you realize diabetes, of course, is one of the greatest risk factors for PAD? We need a place to send patients. We love what you're doing. And at that point, having us on their website, our board of directors thought it was best that we declare what we do versus it being a little bit vague in The Way to My Heart, maybe stepping on the toes of the American Heart Association, just by name. And we didn't want to do that. Everyone has their lane, and they do a great job. So we switched off to the Global PAD Association.
That's awesome. I had so many questions that I want to make sure I get it. But first of all, when you worked for Richard Branson, did you ever get to go to Nectar Island?
I did.
Okay,
so
jealous.
when it was awesome. And he is one of the kindest souls. He's one of those people that I wasn't going to run this competition. I mean, I was a journalist by trade. And I think that he was the catalyst, and what he said to me to get me to run this competition, it led me to where I am now. I don't think that I would be doing what I'm doing now if it weren't for his words. He said, don't let what you don't know and have never done before get in the way of doing something great. Sometimes it's what you don't know and have never done before that could create the greatest disruption in any particular industry. because you're looking at it with a whole different lens. And so just say yes and figure out how to get it done.
That's awesome. He was a mentor of mine. But you said something else that kind of that point, like, so I come from a marketing background. I used to work in the fitness space for 20 years. So compliance, patient care, getting people to exercise is a passion of mine because I know it's medicine. And I knew nothing about the IR, limb salvage space. And I remember the first time sitting in a case and watching a patient's leg literally come back to life, like in front of me. And as a marketer, I'm like, why is this not out there? How come I've never seen this? My grandmother's got PAD, like there's just nothing out there. And so I think that was, to your point of like, it's an amazing process to literally watch a limb, come back to life.
Yep. See it perfuse. And then to be able to touch it and feel the warmth return, almost instantly. And then to actually hear the palpable pulses, like to actually put the Doppler on and hear bounding pulses that you could not hear prior to the procedure. It's amazing. And you can't help but get passionate about it from that first time that you see the miracle that these doctors perform.
So let me ask you, there's a book that I'm a huge fan of called Crucial Conversations, and in there they talk about, they used to do a patient communication process for cancer patients, and they taught them purely how to ask better questions.
Yeah.
And they were able to track that through this teaching of just communication, they had like a 50% higher survival rate than those who didn't.
Yep.
I'm curious, with your program, with the advocacy, do you see higher limb salvage rates, or have you guys tracked that at all compared to those who don't go through your program?
So it's interesting that you bring that up. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I won my Emmy Award for my interview skills. I always believed if you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. So when I started learning all about limb salvage and the options that were available and the hope that could be instilled in patients because of this, I went to these social media groups with the idea that I would use this information to create questions for these patients to ask their doctor. And it was through that process of providing them with a higher gain question, a more informed question that they could use with their doctor. It was actually improving the outcomes because the patients were able to say, yes or no, this procedure is right for me. They were able to say to the doctor, hey, I know you're going in for a bypass, but below where that landing zone is, before where you go in and you put the graft, like, you need to check the outflow. You need to make sure that that's happening. And the doctors were like, whoa, wait a minute, how do you know this? And the patients were able to say, okay, doctor, you're not going to do that. I'm going to go find a doctor who will. And actually, in many of the cases, they were able to avoid bypass altogether because they found a doctor who knew how to treat below the knee arteries, and all they needed was a little bit of kiss of the balloon, and voila, they were fine. They were back walking again.
That's crazy. And it's crazy to watch someone's life, and we see this with all the procedures that these doctors here do, but when someone gets mobility back, everything changes.
Yep.
So talk to me with your patient care program. So they come in, they're going through the walking program, the exercise. Why do you feel you guys have such a high non-attrition rate, or retention rate through the program compared to others?
Love versus sterility. I think it's family. I think it's community. I think that most of my patients, if they're on with me, they always end the conversation with, I love you, have a great night. And even the men, I'm like, really? Wow, okay. I'm having that much of an impact on these patients because I listen. My team, I teach them. You can't really teach people to listen, but I rub off on them, and I invite people that seem to have this same philosophy that I do, that are aligned with my methods and my passion. And we all become like family. And I think along with just the programs, and plus all of our programs are designed by patients themselves. They're not designed by patients, coached and guided by doctors, not to say that they're not aligned. They are 100%, but it's really 100% driven by the patients themselves. The book that we wrote on the diet, 100% literally written to answer specific questions from patients. Another book I'm writing on PAD and how to walk, it's already close to 100 pages. It's all driven by the patient questions. I just write everything, as you said, it's all about the right questions. And the patients have all these questions that they're even afraid to ask the doctors, or they don't have time to ask the doctors in that very short amount of time, the 6 minutes that they do have with them. And so I think that it's just our different approach. You know, when I was first starting out, I had a specific group of societies and doctors that were all reading all my information and telling me I had too many words. As you can tell, I can't find the caboose to my train of thought half the time. So they would mark every single word and just, I almost felt like, you know, and clean it up and polish it and make it so refined and divide it up on a page so it meets Communications 101 for patients in all of their research that they use to show that patients are stupid, they're uneducated, they don't know what they're doing, you got to talk down to them. And patients can feel that intention, right? You don't even have to say it, but with us, we're just talking to the patient, and we believe that if you ask the right questions, you get the right answer. If you talk to them and help to reach them where they are and guide them where they need to be, not just leave them here, but guide them where they need to be, which is more informed, right, about their health. What happens when you're more informed? You're going to be more compliant, because you're not only going to understand that smoking kills you, smoking can take your leg, but you're going to understand the mechanism of action by which what happens the very moment you breathe in with that nicotine and the other chemicals. You're going to know what happens when it goes into your body and it starts traveling through. You're going to understand that when you have a wound on your foot, that with every puff you take, there's no oxygen going to that toe wound. To heal that wound, that wound needs oxygen.
Wait, did you know my toes hurt right now?
Yeah, I know. You were at
really
a conference.
I guess my question, so you're here at OEIS. What is if you could get to all the OBLs and IR docs, what is the one thing that you really want to convey to them? What's the message you're trying to get across to the providers?
That they need what we do, and they need to take it seriously. We're here to offer a free service to their patients: smoking cessation, diet, exercise. We're also here for education. And this is really critical, because right now, OBLs are hanging by a string, right? Because all the hospitals want them out of business. They see them as a threat. They're going to take this one small group of doctors that might not be doing the right thing for the right reasons. I mean, everyone needs to make money, but you don't need to use atherectomy in every single case. You don't need to open up an atherectomy device and claim you used it just so you could bill for it. I have seen that happen. I've seen a lot of things happen. And I know it happens, but it is the exception to the rule. It's not the rule. It's not. I mean, so few of these doctors, on my hand, I can count them. Most doctors are doing the right thing, but the doctors that are doing the right thing don't have as big of a voice as some of these hospitals with the big lobbyists and things like that. And who have Marty Makary, who's now head of the FDA, who has been very vocal about OBLs and has been very vocal about the use of atherectomy. And there was even an article that just came out in one of the journals that again said they looked at Medicare numbers and said that all of these OBLs are just out to make money, that they're better off in the hospitals, more procedures are being done there. But in my experience with the Global PAD Association, the more limb-saving procedures causing amputations are not as much of an issue, not even remotely close to as much of an issue at all, as the number of amputations being performed by doctors doing absolutely nothing in the year prior. So you had a study that came out that said that more than 60% of amputations being performed are being performed without a vascular revascularization in the year prior, and 90% of which are not even getting a vascular evaluation at all. in the year prior to amputation. If you look at our Leg Saver hotline numbers, the patients that are calling us, most of them are on deck for amputation, and they're looking for a second opinion, some sort of Hail Mary. We have saved in the 5 years since inception more than 1,000 limbs tangibly, where these patients were on deck for amputation. More than 85% of those patients that were on deck for amputation that we were able to save, a doctor never even tried to open up their arteries, and that includes, maybe they treated to the knee, but they didn't even treat below the knee, and these were for diabetics. What's even more interesting is more than 35% of all of these patients were not even told they had PAD. They were told they were getting their leg chopped off because of diabetes. And it gets better, because 100% of those, when we suggested they go back and get a vascular evaluation, 100% of them were told they had PAD. And 100% of them we were able to save.
That's crazy. That's, I mean, again, I see your passion, but now I see why. It's like all it takes is a phone call to save a leg.
Yep.
If someone wanted to learn more about your organization, what is the best website?
padhelp.org.
And do you have resources for providers on there as well?
Not as much. We do allow, of course, I'll provide the resources for doctors and clinicians, so they can customize all of our resources. I customize, we have a general PAD. What is PAD? It was designed by patients, and it's an actual trifold brochure that allows the nurse practitioners and PAs especially to be able to go through and mark down the symptoms that the patient has, put their test results. And this is most important, because the number one question that we get asked is, I don't understand, why do I have PAD? My cholesterol isn't high. And they're just not getting an advanced lipid panel to show that they do have an issue with their cholesterol. But there are all kinds of reasons why. And so there's always going to be a few boxes you can check off there. And I think that that's really cool. We have a how to walk brochure. That's the number 2 question. Like, I don't understand. How do I walk? How do you grow collateral vessels? Once they get into our network, they start learning. All the patients are talking about the collateral nation, those collateral vessels, those natural bypasses that you can build around those blockages just by walking as medicine. So we have those. We have our diet book as well. We also have the opportunity that a clinic can actually hire us and say, hey, we want you to be our 24/7 extension to our clinic to provide comprehensive education. We work with them on a proper script for our PAD navigators, and we can be that extra resource, which is even greater for when that patient ends up in the emergency room. How many of the patients end up in the emergency room because they're in pain? Maybe they can't wait for the revascularization procedure next week. They just want pain meds, but yet they meet a vascular surgeon that says, nope, we're going to admit you. We're going to make you sign a document that says if you leave, it's going to be against medical advice, and then the insurance isn't going to cover you getting your leg saved, so you might as well stay here and get your leg chopped off. And so in those situations, we end up where the patient will usually call us and say, hey, I'm having a problem. Can you help advocate for me? Because we develop that relationship with them when we make sure they know that if they're going to the emergency room, and it's especially important if they've had a deep vein arterialization or what they call TAD-V, because they go to the emergency room for pain control. With that particular procedure where they hijack the vein in the ankle and they reroute blood flow using the vein into the foot, the toe wounds get worse. The pain gets worse over the course of a few weeks. So many patients go to the emergency room, and what does the doctor do? They've never seen anything like this before. They're just going to cut it off. So instead, the patients are now, we tell them, and we have doctors that'll call us and say, hey, just had a TAD-V, just had a DVA. Can you make sure to get in touch with this patient? And if they go to the emergency room, here's my number, call me. And so we're able to help prevent amputations and help prevent these patients from getting poached or fall through the cracks. And that's really important for these office-based facilities and ASCs.
That's huge. If someone wants to get a hold of you specifically, what's the best way to reach you?
They can go to padhelp.org. They can also call our Leg Saver hotline, 1-833-PAD-LEGS.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I can't say enough how I love your passion. I love that you're in this to do it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming on.
Thank you. That was fun.